Attention, everyone. This is an emergency broadcast. The unpleasant noise you are about to hear coming from your radio is not a mistake. Please do not turn off your radio, but turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go so that you can make the sound we broadcast as loud as possible.
Welcome back to Positively Horrid, the horror movie review podcast with a morbid affection for the macabre.
And I guess today I am the spooked and haunted girlfriend, Amanda Lane Olsen, and joined with me as always,
invisible specter, William.
Oh man, this week we watched Paranormal Activity, which is 2009's Paranormal Activity.
I also got 2007, and I think that's because...
Oh, really? Oh, it was... you know what it is? It was done independently in 2007, and then...
Yeah, it had a minimal...
release.
Yeah.
Nationwide release by Paramount Pictures in 2009.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of fun trivia to this one. Because I also think it got filmed a couple years before 2007.
Oh,
and
that's
then
interesting.
The maker went around trying to get, funding to advertise it and get it into some theaters. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. I like it.
But everybody that saw it loved it, so.
I mean, I definitely loved this movie. This was the first time I actually ever saw it. I've, of course, heard a lot about this film from many people. But yeah, no, I thought this was great. So what we decided to do this week was we have our big bad list of spooky movies, and we had 50 movies on that list for us to watch on our own, and rolled a percentile dice, which told us that the movie that we were going to watch was going to be Paranormal Activity.
Mm-hmm.
So, shall we dive right into the synopsis?
Yeah, take it away.
Okay, so Paranormal Activity is a found footage film, and it opens with boyfriend Mika playing around in their new home with a video camera, a very expensive, brand new, professional level video camera. The entire movie is essentially shot as though it is happening in real time, and that everything has been compiled together after the fact, with the blessings of the families of Katie and Mika. And there was that little thing at the opening that says, with permission from the families and yada yada, which I don't know about you guys, but that immediately led to me to believe that nobody was going to survive this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually how found footage goes.
Yeah, so Mika has this new video camera, and you find out that some weird things have been happening in the house, and Katie's been a little bit worried about it. And Mika has gotten this new video camera and audio equipment to try to capture some of what has been happening in their house, just to, sort of not only gather evidence that Katie's claims are true, but also to just sort of be able to look back on it and see that what is happening is actually supernatural and does not have any natural causes that can be easily explained away. Right off the bat, you can tell that Mika's kind of an obnoxious boyfriend.
Kind of.
Really? An obnoxious boyfriend?
A horrible person.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but he doesn't show how terrible he is until a little bit later in the movie. Basically, he not only is not really taking any of her claims very seriously, He also is like speculating that, oh, the neighborhood boys who are obsessed with her are probably like peeping through their windows at night, and that's what the sounds are. And he like uses the camera and is all like, oh, look at my beautiful girlfriend, look at how pretty she is, look at her sexy feet. Hey, we should get extracurricular with this camera, if you know what I mean. And she's just like straight out no, like she should be.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked Katie because she's right off the bat, she's a very like crafty person. I don't know if you noticed that when you were watching, but not only does she knit, but she also beads, and she does all sorts of other crafts and things.
I knew she knitted. I remembered that.
Yeah, she knits, and she has a beading table for doing jewelry and stuff, and I just immediately liked her because she does crafts. Katie decided to get a psychic to come over to the house and see how he felt about the things that were happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dr. Fredericks comes over and talks to Katie. And
he's not a fan of that house.
He was not really a fan of that house in general, but he definitely wasn't a fan of it later on.
Well, that's one of my favorite moments, and we'll get to it.
I love that moment too. But yeah, so he sits down and he talks to Katie, and the entire time Mika is not taking anything seriously and is like trying to make fun and is just being an ass in like a supposed to be charming kind of way.
Yeah, but not at all.
You can tell that like Katie's kind of used to it because that's the context of their relationship, but I still thought he was being an asshole. It's not being respectful at all.
Nope.
Turns out that Katie has been haunted by something since she was 8 years old. It first started off as just this dark figure that used to loom over her bed at night, and she shared a room with her sister, and her sister would see it too, and it would just stand there looming over her bed, and never over her sister's bed, always hers. And she would always be like frozen in fear and absolutely terrified until it went away. And eventually that house burned down, and after that the haunting stopped for a while, but eventually in their new house she started feeling that presence again as well. And it even followed her into this new house that she just got with Mika. They just moved in together. They've been dating for 3 years. She's a student, he's working. They have this new starter house together, and weird things have been happening, which have not happened since she and Mika were dating, but have started to happen now that they have moved in together.
Now, I also because this is one of the first movies I remember that introduces the concept of like the person being haunted, not like the house.
Yeah.
And I know now that supernatural people think that can happen too. Mm-hmm. But like I'd never heard of it in either case until Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, everything that I have heard and all like the stories and things have always been like a spirit ends up tied to a particular location.
Yeah.
That had particular relevance to it, not necessarily to a specific individual.
Yeah, because I mean, as a horror movie move, like it makes sense just because there's all the complaints of like the 70s and 80s, like Poltergeist and stuff, where they're like, just leave the house, dum-dum.
Yeah.
And then this, kind of gets rid of that as a solution. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm interested to know if that got introduced to, real life Paranormal Activity because of a fictional concept. Like art influencing life kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really interesting to look at, because I know that specifically in the context of this movie, they mention, or at least specifically Dr. Fredericks mentions that he focuses primarily his studies on ghosts.
Yes.
And he knows that because it has moved locations, it is not a ghost. It has to be something more devilish than that, and it ends up being theoretically a demon.
Yes.
And he recommends that they seek out one of his colleagues who is a demonologist.
It's a different class.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
well,
you get more hit die, but less spells per day. So.
Well, it's because you're more monstrous.
Yes.
In that, yeah. Nerd. Yeah, but so.
I'm not the one that says I'm a demonologist.
Okay, well, I don't say I'm a demonologist either. But
I was saying that demonologists are nerds.
Oh, well, yeah. Dr. Johann Averies is definitely a nerd, and Mika does certainly make fun of him wildly for that fact, even though he's never met the guy. And never will, it turns out. So yeah.
Like, I own a monster manual. I could put demonologist on my business card, too.
Beside the point. Anyway, so turns out that it is potentially this demon, and demons are specifically feeding off of negative energy, and Mika is being an asshole and is like, well, is there anything that we can do to, like, spur on this activity? Because even though Katie is like, I don't want this stuff to happen, I want it to go away, Mika is intent on getting proof on film of this. Turns out that high stress situations and situations of high negativity will
and high
bring
douchebaggery.
Out... And what?
High douchebaggery.
Yes, that too. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I get particularly stressed when I am around such high levels of douchebaggery.
Mm-hmm.
So that causes lots of negative energy for the demon to feed off of. That's what Dr. Frederick says is, like, situations of high stress and high negativity will give the demon more energy to feed off of to manifest itself, basically.
Yes.
And so at that point, it's basically you see the relationship between Katie and Mika start to crumble a little bit, because Katie is very serious about this and Mika is just not taking anything seriously whatsoever. He refuses to contact the demonologist, Dr. Avery's, even though Katie's very interested in talking to him and getting this whole thing sorted out. But at the same time, Mika insists on always keeping the camera around and recording everything. So at first, the camera starts to only get small things that are happening.
Yeah, one of the big...
Only at night.
the go-to shots was the night... the tripod setup in the bedroom.
Yeah, which I loved. That was perfect.
So that was like their like the stationary camera.
Yeah.
Hard cam or whatever it is. And so, like, the other times he was just kind of carrying it around or putting it down on stuff. But then, I don't know, it was like this, like, back to normal, but it wasn't reassuring because it was always, like, that was always the most horrifying of the shots. Empty background space, which in a horror movie is the worst.
It just made me tense about what could be coming into that space, because I am always aware of, like, the spatial makeup of shots in horror movies, because
because that's what you play with if you're good.
If there is an empty space, that space needs to be filled. And so when
because this shot's like 2/3 the bed, so you get both of them there, and then 1/3 an open doorway down a long hallway.
It was insane. And this was not the only time, but this was definitely one of the most common occurrences of having that open space, which I will dig into in the autopsy. So at first, it's just like...
I think it's a door first.
Like a rumbling. No, it's not the door first. It's the keys first, downstairs.
Oh, that's right.
There's like this low humming sound that precedes every occurrence.
Yes.
And then you hear
unsettling audio that we like to talk about.
Yeah. You hear the keys drop. And then they wake up the next morning, and Katie goes downstairs, and she's like really confused because her keys are in the middle of the kitchen floor when she left them on the corner of the countertop, like close to the wall. She doesn't know how they got there. And then there's like the door moving, and what was one of the... I can't remember all of the other small things, but like...
I think some sheet tugging.
A little bit of sheet tugging.
A little subtle at first.
Yeah.
Because I think the first big scare is the bang, right?
Yes.
Because that one, I remember, I saw this movie in theaters, and that freaked me right out.
Oh my god, it was insane. Yeah, no, that freaked me out too. I was watching this in the middle of the day with like the lights on, and I was still freaked out by it. It took me completely by surprise. I think I might have shouted a little bit too. Yeah, so
yeah, 'cause it sounds like a car hit the other side of the wall of their bedroom,
Basically.
which is like out into their big open living room. Which I don't know, like I always focused on that when I saw it. I don't know why, because I was like, it's because the demons get all that space.
Yeah,
so you just bang on the wall from their stairway.
It's true, he can. But yeah, so the next morning, Mika starts to play with doing an EVP session and asks a whole bunch of questions. And most of them are like really dumb, like, who are you? Why are you here? And then he makes a whole bunch of Monty Python references at the end. But the big question that he asks is, like, if I got a Ouija board, would you talk to me through that? And when he plays back the audio, there is a distinct growling sound after that question, which is insane. And of course, Katie, being of sound mind and understanding the gravity of this situation, tells Mika no way in hell is he bringing a Ouija board into this house, because that will literally just invite the thing in and invite them to continue to communicate, and it will be bad news.
Which that also, that was not as popular like a thing, I think, before this movie. Like, obviously that existed.
Yeah.
But that concept of, like, engaging makes it worse, or, like, inviting.
Right.
And so it was another thing that just this movie, I think, popularized.
The way that I've always been taught is that utilizing a Ouija board opens up a channel through which things can happen. And so by using a Ouija board, you are willingly opening up a channel through which that entity can cross through and continue to wreak havoc on this side. Whereas they have limited power if they don't have a channel through which to do that. And then the next thing that happens is that Katie gets, it seems like she gets like possessed or something, but she gets out of bed in a trance and then just stands by the bed for like 2 hours.
Yeah,
and
that fast forward is
out of
always...
the room. It was insane. It was beautifully done, but it was absolutely insane. And then
I would have liked to seen the cut to like the cops watching it, and then one guy just has a remote and he's like, this goes on for a while, because they do just fast forward it.
They do.
Because obviously they can't have her stand.
It's like 2 hours of her just standing there.
And like it doesn't really jar you out because it's whatever, and it's creepy how she does a good job at subtly moving, so it looks like weird and kind of like that herky-jerky ghost thing.
Every time that they did like a fast forward, all of the like little movements that happened, they were spot on. Then Mika wakes up, realizes that Katie is gone, and goes through the house with the camera trying to find her. Turns out she went outside and sat on the swing outside, and she refuses to come back inside, and she's just not interested at all in moving from her spot, and she's out there in the cold, which, I mean, they're in San Diego, how cold is it gonna get, am I right? But
well, it's like, cold, they complain. It's like 60 degrees, and they're like, I'm
from New England. Cold isn't cold in what she's wearing until it gets to be like under freezing, maybe. And so Mika goes in to get blankets, and he freaks out because when he is down in the living room looking for blankets, and when Katie is still outside on the swing, the static from the TV immediately just turns on out of nowhere upstairs in the bedroom and freaks him out.
Ghosts love static.
It's loud. Yeah, they do. I don't know why, but they do.
Man, what a thing that's just kind of gone now. Like, a ghost can't do that anymore. Now if a ghost turns on a TV, it's just going to be the Roku symbol bouncing around. And it just doesn't have the same
it does not have
spookness
the same
to it.
Effect. Well, because there isn't any audio that's associated with that, really.
Yeah.
Then he goes up and investigates that and is like, what the fuck? Who's in this house? What's going on? And he turns around, and Katie is right there in the doorway of the bedroom, like, appearing to be waking up and being like, what's going on? What are you doing? Go back to bed. and doesn't remember anything that just happened. And the next day, they're both looking at the video from that, and she does not remember any of it whatsoever. Mika is an asshole again and disrespects his girlfriend's wishes again and brings home a Ouija board into the house. And they fight about it because she specifically told him not to do that. And he starts being an asshole and is like, oh, you just said that you didn't want me to buy a Ouija board. I didn't buy it. I borrowed it from someone. I am just being a dick. And he leaves it on the living room
coffee
table, the coffee table, with the cursor on it for when they go out for date night. And at first she was real excited about going out and having a good night with her boyfriend, but he brought home the Ouija board, and then tensions rose, and the negativity in the air just, like, spiraled out of control. They left the house, and
they left
the Ouija
camera
board
on.
Yep, the Ouija board started moving on its own, and the camera, which got left on, captured the whole thing. And then the Ouija board caught on fire.
Which everything in the movie is practical. There's no special effects.
I love practical effects so much.
Yeah, well, so they did everything in camera because it's literally just what you see is what happened. But I want to know what it was spelling because it's not an above.
Yeah, you have no idea what it's spelling. And during the course of the rest of the film, Mika's trying to figure it out. And it's, like, weird. And he thinks he figured out that it could be, like, Diane or Dinah or something. Yes. And that didn't really make very much sense.
Fuck you, Mika, mostly.
Yeah.
Basically. What I think it started for.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it gets faster and faster and then ignites. And it doesn't burn down their house, luckily.
Yeah, I honestly thought that was where that was going to go after Katie mentioned that her first house burned down. Thankfully, it did not. And so Katie and Mika come home, and they're fighting, and they are continuing with the negative energy. At that point, Mika realizes that the cursor has moved on the Ouija board, and he looks back at it and looks back at the video, and Katie really, really, truly does not want to have anything to do with it. She is done. She is done with the Ouija board. She's done with the camera. She is done with Mika. And she is pissed off and just does not want anything to go on with that. A couple nights later, after Mika has, agreed dejectedly in his stupid, I'm an apologetic boyfriend who's not really apologetic state of being like, I'm not going to do anything that's going to provoke the entity. I'm not going to do anything against Katie's wishes. I'm not blah, blah, blah. He decides that he's going to sprinkle some baby powder at different points throughout the hallway, including at the entrance to the bedroom. Because if this entity is going to be walking through the house, it should pick up on that. Which, I mean, if he's not corporeal, then I don't see how it would necessarily. But at the same time, something does happen.
Yeah, I think that's just a classic ghost story thing. Because so when I was going around doing my weird NJ trips to all the haunted spots when I was in high school, half of them were stuff like, if you put baby powder on your dashboard, little hands will show up, or if you put it here, like a footprint will show up, like that kind of thing. So it's like a very classic ghost thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I feel like he could have prevented anything from coming into the room if he had used salt instead of baby powder. So honestly, I don't feel bad about him at the end. No. But yeah,
but they wake up and find footprints in the baby powder.
Mm-hmm. And they lead to
not
the
people
attic.
Footprints. Well,
they're like
footprints they left like dinosaur
three-toed.
feet.
Yeah, like three-toed, weird, like thick-footed dinosaur-style footprints.
Which I liked that too. Those were legitimately creepy.
They were. Oh my god. So this was definitely like not a bipedal figure, but like a more animalistic monster at this point is how that seemed to me. So yeah, they follow the footprints, and it turns out that they lead to the attic, where the little opening to the attic has been pushed aside, And they're both freaked out because neither of them pushed the attic thing aside. And I was immediately reminded of that murder case of the dude who was living in the fucking attic of that dead guy and his wife for like several years.
Yeah, that's
and was like, oh, this isn't a haunting. You've just got a hobo living in your attic.
Which that's a legitimate, not fear, but like there's that urban legend of like the dude that thought mice or something or rats were like eating his food, so he like for whatever reason set up a video camera, and then it's just a video of like this decrepit little girl coming out and like eating his food and then going back in the cabinet, and he realizes that she never left the cabinet since he was recording, so like he's sitting next to her right then. Yeah, it's creepy. That one always gets me.
That's spooky. But
luckily,
yeah, so
no hobos.
At that point, I was like, dudes, you don't have a haunting. You have a hobo living in your attic
with chicken feet. You have a giant chicken in your attic.
Chicken hobo in the attic. And admittedly, they do check out the attic, and the attic is gross. Like, clearly has not been looked at since they moved in. Like, the entire house is gorgeous, but the attic is just absolutely nasty because it's basically just a crawl space, and it's just
plus they have all the hobos
spray foam stuff
that have been living up there.
And Mika finds a photograph in the attic that is burned on the edges.
Yeah,
and he brings it down to Katie, and it turns out that it's a photograph of Katie from the old house that burned down. Ba-ba-boom. There's no way that could have been there because they lost everything in that fire. She had not seen this photograph in 15 years. Either someone was playing a really nasty prank on them, or something was happening that could not be explained by the usual means. At that point, Katie finally calls Dr. Avery's, but he's out of the country, so he can't see them. They're both absolutely terrified, and their relationship is still not, like, fantastic, but they're trying to stick together.
Never great to begin with.
I mean, yeah, but everything gets, like, super intense and, like, starts happening in the daytime. At one point, they hear this just, like, crash from upstairs while they're down in the living room, and it turns out that a photograph of the two of them has been essentially smashed on the wall as though somebody had, like, punched into it, and the center point of the cracks is over Mika's face, and Mika's face also has claw marks through it in the photograph. 3, as it turns out. The same amount of toes that this monster has.
It could also be a wolverine.
That too. It could have been Wolverine.
Wolverine riding a chocobo.
Yeah, that's clearly what it was. That makes me feel so much less scared.
See?
Imagining that. Yeah, absolutely.
It makes me more scared.
Really?
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
He's not a bad guy.
Yeah, he's the best at what he does, and what he does isn't very nice.
Just because he's not nice doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Anyhow, that was a tangent. So yeah, no, at that point in the film, when I saw that happening and when I was paying attention to all of the patterns, it dawned on me that, well, okay, at that point, I developed a theory, and I don't want to bring about that theory necessarily now. I want to talk about that a little later, if that's okay.
That's fine. I support this theory. I'm on board.
I think it works, but needless to say, my theory made me less scared throughout the entire thing, and was just like, yeah, he deserves what's coming to him, because Mika is just repeatedly getting super pissed off and angry, increasingly negative and stressed
and like
out,
screaming at it, and
feeding this thing.
He may at one point have said, "Come at me, bro."
He did. No, he literally was just like, "Is that all you got? Is that what you've got? Come on, like, let's see what you can
punch this ghost in its ghost face."
Seriously, it's the worst. And so things keep getting worse, and they can't sleep, and he's been calling out of work, and Katie hasn't been going to classes, and they call Dr. Fredericks back to the house because they still can't get in touch with Dr. Avery's. And do you want to talk about this part? Because you love this part.
Yeah, so he, the psychic walks into the house, there's a beat pause, and then he's just like, ooh, what did you do? Oh, it's so bad in here. Oh, it's so very, very bad in here.
It's so bad. So bad.
Like, he just like freaks out. He's like, it's so negative. What did you do?
I can't be
Yeah,
here.
he's like, I'm leaving.
I'm sorry, I have to leave. Like, no.
You're all dead. Goodbye.
Yep. And so they are so scared at this point, and they're like, we have to get out of this house. Even though Dr. Fredericks like straight up told them like leaving the place will not help at all.
Yeah, he might have just said that because he didn't want them to come find him.
I mean, that's also
He's
fair.
like, you stay here.
Yeah, and he was literally
you soak in
like,
this evil dishwater you've created.
He was literally just like, Dr. Avery's is going to be back in a couple of days. Just hold out until then, and I'll send him to you.
He'll get his demon-killing bone sword and bring it over.
Mm-hmm. And his holy water.
Yeah, and an obsidian amulet he uses.
While they are asleep and like trying to like snuggle up real close to like protect each other, there's a moment of the covers billowing again. Katie literally gets pulled by her ankles out of bed, out of the bedroom into the hallway, is like screaming, and Mika goes after her and like fights off the thing. And then it cuts to a little bit later, and Mika is showing off like basically like they're packing, they're getting ready, they're gonna leave, they're gonna head to a motel and
make this other people's problem.
Katie shows off, yeah, exactly, and Katie shows off the bite mark that she has on her back, which is a really, really good like it was a good makeup, did a really great job on that.
Yeah, they got Hugh Jackman's jaw down perfectly.
Exactly. I mean, there's no way in hell that was a chocobo beak. Like,
no.
There were teeth marks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chocobo might have teeth. I don't know a lot about them.
I don't think they do. The curvature of their beak implies to me that they use their beak for the ripping and rending of flesh.
The ripping of Moogles that they devour.
Well, I don't know what chocobos eat.
They eat those cute little cat things, the Moogles.
Oh, yeah. Katie goes back to bed. You don't see this happen. It like cuts to her like snuggled up in the bed, and Mika has like packed everything and is ready to go, and is like, come on, Katie, let's go, everything's gonna be fine, like we're all packed up and ready to go. And she insists that she doesn't want to leave, she wants to stay. He leaves the camera in the room with her. She's like smiling and is like, everything's gonna be okay now. And there's like a layered other voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had to listen to it 2 or 3 times to like actually hear it, but my subtitles told me that there was another voice. But like, there was another voice that was layered on top of hers. That was like the possessed Katie being like, everything's gonna be okay now. The next night, Katie does the thing where she gets out of bed again and is possessed and just stands there for a couple of hours. But this time, she gets out of bed, the covers get completely pulled off of Mika without her doing anything, and then she walks around to his side of the bed and just stares at him. It does the thing where they fast forward through that, and then at that point, she walks around and then goes downstairs. And things are silent for a moment, and then she just lets out this blood-curdling scream for Mika, and is just shouting for him, and he lunges out of bed, rushes downstairs, and it's just lots of yelling, lots of screaming. Immediately, all at once, it just stops. Everything just stops. And then heavy footsteps come up the stairs, one by one.
Which we have heard before.
Yep, but heavier now than they have ever been. All at once, just something just hurtles into the room. And it turns out it's Mika's dead body, and it knocks over the camera.
Just getting speedball specialed.
Basically. And it knocks over the camera, and the camera is askew and on the ground, and it sees Katie walk in with like blood all over her shirt. She like crawls over to his body and like sniffs at him, and then looks up at the camera and just lunges at it. And then there's the epilogue at that point, because it cuts and it's just like Mika's body was discovered by the police, yada yada. Katie's whereabouts are unknown, blah blah blah. This is all a true story. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, they tried to Blair Witch it a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. That is Paranormal Activity.
Goodbye.
What do you mean goodbye? We have to get into the autopsy,
yes.
silly goose. I've done most of the talking. I want to hear you start to dissect this thing a little bit.
I know. Well, a lot of that's I can still hear me through my headphones. It's very distracting.
That's
but
okay.
I'll try to power through it. When I was looking up like the financial information, I found a ton. There's so many like fun facts with this movie. It's like we said, it was.
Hear fun facts. I love fun facts.
Which I don't want to just read off a list, but.
Well, I mean, one fun fact that I absolutely love is that everybody who shows up in the movie, they all use their names, like their actors' names, as the name of their characters. So the actress who played Katie is named Katie. The actor who played Mika is named Mika. The actor who played Dr. Fredericks, his last name is actually Fredericks. Like, it's insane.
Yeah. They also did not have scripts.
No.
Yeah,
that's cool.
They were just kind of told talking points and character motivations, but then, just told to be real people. They did a really great job, because I was going to say the acting in this was absolutely phenomenal. Like, I fully believed that it was like an actual thing that was happening to them. It was an incredibly believable premise. It was filmed in the director's home, and it was shot in 10 days, which I thought was crazy. Oh, that's amazing.
Shot in 10 days. That's wild.
They had the demonologist was supposed to be in it, but they ended, and he just kind of explaining. I think because it seems like they did such deep research into the, like, not cliche, but like this stuff that all paranormal investigators talk about happening. So like the standard stuff in like a real, I don't want to say quote unquote, but like a real ghost story. And so they covered that, and then they also wanted to get into the demon stuff, but it was just very like not monologue-y, exposition-y.
Yeah.
But Avery's was a character in the film. They just cut them out. That's
fair. I like it better without Avery's.
Yeah, it was cool that they didn't have any help. There was no one there to help them.
Right, exactly. Like,
it's very isolating.
The expert was not there, and if they had called the expert when it was suggested to them that they should, maybe they would have gotten the help that they needed. But because they waited so long, they didn't. And so it was, again, so like one of the things that I noticed is that Mika's stubbornness was one of the things that was their undoing entirely during this whole thing. Mika's actions were the instigators for every action that happened.
Yeah, he was doing like a checklist of things not to do.
Yeah, all of the things that they said not to do, he definitely did. Like, in spades. So the theory that I had that I mentioned was that I thought that this was kind of like a like guard dog sort of a scenario where the demon was there to protect Katie and had been from an early age and was always there to like look out for her and watch out for her, but he was a type of creature that was so terrifying to her that obviously she did not trust its presence. But that ultimately did not take away from the fact that what the demon was doing was protecting her from a toxic relationship. And
yeah, it was kind of like the Vavitch.
I have not seen that one yet, and it is on our list, but we have to wait until we can talk about it with Sarah.
Yes, but it had one of those, like, once you think about it, you're like, oh, this is a happy ending.
Honestly, yeah. I did not feel bad for anything that happened to Mika because he was just a toxic bullshit boyfriend the entire time. And anything that happened did not actually harm Katie in any way, just, like, scared her. And he was the only one who was physically hurt by basically all of this until it, like, bit her to get her out of the way and get her away from him. Yeah. You know? It was his photograph that was broken
Wolverine.
And scratched. And when you see the photograph of her from the house, she is completely intact, whereas the edges of the photograph are burned. But, like, the part that has her in it is completely there and is untouched. All of the instances take place after Mika and Katie have a fight in some way. And they only started getting bad after they decided to move in together, which is a big step in a relationship. That is my theory, is that whatever this creature was, it was trying to protect Katie from Mika. Because he's a real shit. He's awful. At one point, he pretends to turn off the camera and, like, puts it by the bedside and is like, oh, hey, let's, you know. And she's like, what are you doing? Like, that's the on light. Like, that's the record light. And he's like, no, it's not. That's the standby light. And is, like, straight up gaslighting her and lying to her to try to get her to get with him with the camera on. Because he's an ass.
Yeah.
I hated that. I hated that so much. He's the worst. It was basically at that point that was like, I don't care what happens to this man.
But, and I don't know if anybody listening has seen the other Paranormal Activities. I have. They weren't in order, and it's kind of a jumble in my brain, but I do know that the demon, who, as I've said a lot, becomes less of a incorporeal, kind of interdimensional here and kind of not here monster and just turns into a tall invisible man. This, like, demon that works for this cult family. And so you basically got it.
Nice.
Like, that comes later.
Awesome.
And the Diane thing comes into play. Like, it's something to do with her sister, and they steal kids, and I don't know, it's been a while.
That's wild.
But,
I mean, I do definitely want to see the other ones.
Yeah, we'll do them.
Yeah.
I don't think they're... This is a very good horror movie, and
it was amazing.
It's kind of seminal, and like I'd said, it kind of broke a lot of the... Not broke, but introduced a lot of, like, the ghost hunter tropes, and... found, like, which I think spurred a lot of these shows. Like, I think a lot of the horror movies of that time were still very slashery.
Yeah.
After, like, Scream, and they were still making Halloween movies and stuff, and then after this, a lot of people got back into ghosts.
Yeah, so many things are hauntings and haunted dolls and haunted places and haunted houses now. Like, in the past, like, 10 years or so, that has been, like, the big thing. You know, whereas, like, 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s, it was all slasher stuff. But yeah, no, the thing that I loved about this movie was that the choice to make this a found footage style film was absolutely spot on. I do not think it would have worked as well if it was not a found footage film done in the style of just a couple in their home playing with a home video camera. Like, it was amazing. All of the little details from Mika accidentally focusing in on the plants in the background instead of Katie's face, which made her blurry when she was talking about her past with the hauntings, to, like, the really real moments that they had, because they did not have the scripts, like you said. They just went with the dialogue. It turned it into an incredibly realistic improvised moment between two people in a relationship, and it felt incredibly genuine because of that, and that made it feel more scary. Like, it wasn't something where you had to suspend your disbelief as much, because it felt like it was something that you were just watching somebody's whole home movies about this thing that really happened. It was just so good, you guys. It was so good. I loved the effects. I want to know how they pulled off that pulling her from the bed effect, because that was insane.
They just tied a rope around her leg.
Yeah, but you didn't see anything on the camera.
Yeah, I mean, the director did touch stuff up in After Effects, but they didn't, like, create anything.
Obviously, it must have been some sort of, like a pulley kind of a rig, you know, like, duh. But I still want to know what that looked like, because they weren't on a soundstage. They were in his home.
Yeah.
How did they rig that up? That's amazing.
They took the carpet out of that hallway so they could drag her down it. And do the baby powder, too.
With such a small budget, relatively speaking, too.
Yeah, which we can get into now. The movie cost around $15,000 to make, which is cheaper than Blair Witch took to make.
Admittedly, if your actors are the ones who are going around with the cameras and you only have a couple of actors.
Yeah, I mean that's what Blair Witch was as well.
Yeah.
But I know most of their budget went into their own because they advertised themselves as well. Whereas DreamWorks bought this movie for $350,000. So technically that's what it costs to make it for DreamWorks.
Yeah.
But their return was $193 million.
Holy shit.
Which makes it, after Blair Witch, the second most profitable return on investment for a film.
That's insane. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I mean, well deserved. This is a beautiful, incredible movie.
For what was basically someone's like independent film, like they're not a student film, but something they did it in their house.
Indie film that was like really simple in concept and really simple in execution, and it was so successful.
And it just exploded. Yeah, people ate it up.
It was amazing.
Became like the new Saw franchise where they kind of made one like every year or so, which some of them are good, and so I stopped watching after I think 5, but I thought 5 was pretty good. And just we'll talk about 5. 5 does a lot of cool stuff with technology, it's not like they stop innovating. At least they're still trying. Like they didn't give up just because now we don't have to because people are just going to see it every Halloween, whatever. But like they're still playing around, trying out new stuff, messing with what you can do with found footage. So there's heart there.
I love found footage. I love found footage a lot. I mean, one thing that this film reminded me of a lot was Marble Hornets, which is something that I was introduced to when I was a freshman in college. So that was in the fall of 2010 and early 2011. So this was after Paranormal Activity had come out, and I'm sure that because of both Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity that these found footage style things were made more popular. You could see that a lot of the conventions that the things that came after it started to utilize, from the empty space and the shaky cam and the incorrect focus to increase the tensions and make it seem more real. Those all originated here with this.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's a beautiful film.
And if you go on to Metacritic, they kind of even out between the user score and the Metascore. It's a 68 or a 5.9, which I think it's kind of fair, because if it's not your deal of found footage, found footage can bore people.
How? I mean, yeah, you're right. I get it, but I don't see how that could have been boring to someone.
Yeah, it's a little low, but it's like a lot of positive reviews and then a lot of negative reviews and not a lot of mixed reviews, so either you loved it or you hated it.
That's fair.
And then if you go on Rotten Tomato, they are the reverse of most of the movies we've seen so far.
Oh yeah?
Which I know we talk about this every time. The audience score is only a 56%, but the tomato meter is 83%.
I mean, I agree with the tomato meter, I would say.
Yeah. So this one was critically acclaimed, but kind of meh from an audience standpoint.
From an audience standpoint. I mean, admittedly, if you don't really understand what you're getting into when you're going to see this film, then I would get how someone might be taken aback by the found footage style. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I kind of wish that I could have been there to see this film in the theaters. When that came out, I would have probably pissed myself in the theater. Not because I was that young, but because I was such a wimp back then.
It was a spooky one.
It was. I loved it.
I think this one got me a little bit.
I was less scared when I realized that this thing was trying to protect Katie, but that ending still got me, got me.
Yeah, this one definitely scared me when I left the theater, and I think The Ring did as well. And those are like I'm not like, oh, I'm not scared of horror movies, but I find them funnier rather than scary.
It's
but yeah,
true.
this and The Ring are two of the movies when I came out, I was like, I'm scared.
You are not as affected by the scare tactics that the horror genre conventions end up using to try to elicit an emotional response from you. Whereas I, on the other hand, am very, very susceptible to their tricks. So I think that's part of why we make such a good team.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this has been 2007 to 2009's Paranormal Activity.
All right. Do we want to pick our
Yeah, let's roll the bones.
Okay. Do you have your set with you?
I do not.
I also do not. I can go get them.
Okay.
Okay. All right. You ready to roll the bones?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is an 89.
All right. So what were we doing?
We have 50 movies, so that is a 39.
All right. 39 is Alien.
Ooh, okay. So I guess tune in next week to hear us review Alien.
It's one of my favorite movies.
I'm really excited about this. I still haven't seen it, but I can't wait. This is going to be really fun. Okay, well, as always, there are a lot of weirdos out there, you guys.
So we're not alone.
All right, bye.
Yeah.